Hello everyone, I'm here to tell you how I make my Rapunzel wigs. Now I make two different versions. I make the movie accurate big braid and then I make a more park accurate braid. In this video I'm going to be telling you how to make the park accurate braid. So I wish you the best of luck with making your wig and let me know if you have any questions. Enjoy! You are going to need one base wig. I prefer to use lace front wigs because for some reason the wig cap is a little bit stretchier, so there's more room for the braid. So I personally like to use the Matilda, but you can use whatever base wig you'd like. And you need 8 packs of short wefts. Again, you can use however many short wefts you would like. You can use long wefts if you want, but I prefer to use short wefts just because you don't have as much hair to have to brush. So it gets tangled a lot less than it would with long wefts. So again, you're welcome to pick whatever wigs you would like, but this is what I personally use for my own wigs. As well, I would recommend not getting really long wigs. These fibers tangle really easily, so the shorter fibers that you have to deal with, the easier it's going to be for this wig. You will need 1 yard of cotton batting, preferably the extra thick type of cotton batting. They usually have a thinner variety and then a thicker variety. Get the thicker variety. And then 1 yard of tulle that is pretty close to the color of the hair that you're using. I usually just go with tan and it blends in just fine. You will need a piece of foam or fabric that matches or is close to the color of the hair that you're using. You will need embroidery thread or some other type of string. You will need duct tape, and you will need fairy lights or some other form of lights if that's what you were wanting to add to your wig. You're going to need a hot glue gun and hot glue sticks. You're going to need hair styling tools. Here I have hairspray, a curling iron, really any heated styling tool will work though. I have a wig comb. I have a teasing brush. I have a fine tooth comb with the needle point tip. I have hair ties and elastics, hair clips, bobby pins. This is like wig conditioning spray to make it easier to brush through. This is a heat protective glove for using the straight or the curling iron, and scissors. You are going to need a lot of flowers. You won't necessarily need this many, but you will need a lot. And last but not least, you will need a lot of patience for this wig. The first time making this, it took me 3 weeks and I had to start over multiple times. I can crank these out in about like 8 hours now, but you will need a lot of patience and you'll need to move slowly if this is your first time doing a wig like this. So I start by taking the yard of cotton batting and then I cut it in half. So what was once a 48-inch piece of cotton batting is now 24 inches, and then I measure it into 3 even sections. So in this case it happens to be in 8-inch pieces. I'm going to cut them all the way across into 3 even separate pieces of cotton batting. I then take the embroidery thread, but you can use any string, and I cut it into something that's about 8 inches long, but this doesn't have to be very precise. Like I do this pretty unevenly. And then what I do is I take the cotton batting pieces and I divide them. I divide it in half, and then I divide it in half again, and then I tie off a string. Basically I half each string that's already on the cotton batting, and I roll it up and then I tie it up so it doesn't unravel. And I will show you what that looks like in just a second. So this is what the cotton batting looks like all rolled up. I have 9 strings along the cotton batting, but of course you can use more or less if you want. But what I do is this is where all the strings are. This is where I put the hair weft, so it helps as a marker for me. And then on the ends here I have a loop on the strings, so that way I can suspend the strands when I attach hair wefts to it, so I don't have to do it on the ground. Then in case you noticed, because these strands are so the width of the cotton batting is so small, it starts to open up, which can cause an issue once the hair starts to be placed on it, and it'll separate the hair, which isn't what you want. You want it to look like a strand of hair. So what I do is I hot glue the pieces shut. So I'll just put some hot glue there, and then I'll push it down and I'll hold it for a little bit, and then it'll stay shut that way. This is something that's just a personal preference. You can, of course, solve this by doing more strings. I find that this is an easier and quicker way to do it. And then you will repeat the same process for the next 2 strands. Next, we're going to take our packs of short wefts and we're going to cut the tracks, which is this part of the weft. We're going to cut that into shorter sections that we can wrap around the cotton batting strands. Our short wefts come folded up. I believe they're folded in half about 4 times. I could be wrong though, and they are tied with these little wires. So we're going to undo those. And then once we have it untied, we're gonna unfold it twice. So you'll see that it's still folded up. I believe this measures about 1 foot. Arda wefts come in 8-foot tracks. So once we cut this, you're gonna have 8 individual weft pieces. So I'm gonna take my scissors, and for this one, you can see this is where everything's pretty much folded in half. We're just gonna stick the scissors in there. We're gonna snip that. And then over here, there are 2 sections that have to be snipped. There's this part. I'm just gonna stick our scissors and cut. And then there's one little piece underneath everything that we're also going to cut. And then we are going to separate all of the wefts that we had just cut. I fold them up and I brush them, and then I start making a stack. You're gonna repeat the process for all of the other packs of wefts. And once all of your wefts are cut up, you're going to hang up one of the strands. And what I do for the strands, how I count them out, is I skip this one, but I'll put 2 strings of wefts on each string, and I'll continue that all the way to the top on each string. So I do 2 pieces of wefts per string. So this is what 2 strands of wefts look like wrapped around. All I did was I hot glued around the strand of cotton batting, and then I wrapped the hair wefts around the hot glue, then put more hot glue on, and then put the second strand over it. And that's what it looks like. So you're going to do that for each string that goes up the cotton batting, and then you're going to do that for each individual cotton batting strand. So this is what one completed strand of the braid looks like. I have it all covered up in wefts. And before I go on to the next strand, I'm actually gonna go make this slip that goes over this strand of the braid. So I'm gonna go and grab the tulle. So I have my tulle fabric that I picked out, and I am going to cut it in thirds. This doesn't have to be super precise. You're actually going to lose a lot of the fabric once it's sewn up, but just roughly cut about 1/3 into the tulle fabric, and I have it folded in half right now as well in this way. So this is a yard of tulle fabric. That's so it could completely cover the braid strand right there. So you need a yard of the cotton batting and a yard of the tulle fabric. And once you have the tulle cut into the different sections, you're going to fold it in half all the way across, and you can pin it if you feel like you have to. I usually don't pin it just because it doesn't have to be anything clean. And we're gonna go run it through the sewing machine. So once you have your sewing machine set up, I would recommend using a white or a thread color that's close to the hair color that you're using. This is just to kind of hide the seam a little bit more once it's over the hair. And you're going to be just sewing a tube pretty much that's about 3 inches in width. And you're just going to run it through the sewing machine. So once you have it set up, you're going to and then back stitch it a bit just so it doesn't tear as you're putting it over the braid strand. And once the tube is all sewn, you're going to then cut off all of the excess fabric on the outside of the seam. Don't cut too close to the seam as it's going to make the netting tear. But also you don't want to leave too much extra fabric because it'll make the seam more obvious once it's on the hair and on the wig. And once the seam is nice and cut, we are going to flip the tube inside out. So this excess fabric is now on the inside of the tube. The tube has been flipped inside out. As you can see, the fabric is now on the inside of the seam and it is ready to go over the braid strand. We are then going to slide the tubing over the strand of hair. Make sure that the hair is as smooth as possible before you start to pull the netting down. Once you pull it down, you really can't go back up without having to take the entire thing off and redoing it, which is just a big pain in the butt. So you're gonna slowly pull it down the tube, like so. And here's what it looks like with the netting over the tube. As you can see, you can't really tell that there's a net over the tube unless you get really close to it. There's the seam. You can see it, but it's hard if you match it correctly. You'll start to notice that there are some sections where the hair will separate, and that's usually around the ends of the hair wefts. But don't worry, that's going to happen, and I will show you how to fix that as we get further into making the braid. And with that, we are going to continue that process with the other 2 strands of the braid. So now that we have the 3 strands done, we can start crafting the braid. Before we start braiding the strands though, we're actually going to add this smaller braid detailing along the strands. So we're gonna only do that on 1. Of course you can do that on more if you want to, but I only ever do it on 1. So you're gonna take your hair weft pieces and you're gonna cut them in half like this. And then you're gonna fold one piece in half 3 times. So it makes this really thin strand. And then you're going to braid it. And you'll have this single braid right here. And you're gonna need 5 of those. Next, you're going to take one strand of your choice and hot glue the little braid pieces on top of the strand. I like to follow the seam of the netting. That way it just keeps the braid straight, and it also helps hide the seam as well. So you're gonna do that all the way down the braid with the rest of the little braid strands. Once you have all the braids on the strand of the bigger braid, we can start braiding the big braid. So first you're gonna start by tying together the 3 strands with the same string that you used for the cotton batting earlier. And then you can start braiding. When you do braid, make sure that you flip the strands around so the braid is always showing on the outside and it doesn't get lost inside the braid. And you can also do this to hide other parts of the braid that are exposed, other parts of the cotton batting that are exposed. So you can twist it around and hide it so it shows a part of the braid that shows a bit more hair. And we now have it all braided. First and foremost, we need to get the 2 ends of the braids as small as possible. This part of the braid is going to be going inside the wig, so you need as little mass as possible so the wig actually fits, and you need it to be as little as possible over here so the foam of the batting of the braid doesn't stick through the little tail hairs over there. So we're gonna start with here. We're gonna grab some duct tape and we're just gonna wrap it as tightly as possible. Now we have it duct taped, and this also helps hold the strands together so they don't fall apart. It just keeps it nice and secure. We're gonna take our light colored foam piece and we're gonna put it over the cap so that way the silver would stand out a lot more than this color would. This foam piece is it has adhesive on the back. It doesn't necessarily have to have adhesive because I glue it down anyway, but it does help with just a little bit more security and it'll help it stay on a little bit more. So I start by cutting the foam piece so I can use the excess for other braids, and I have taken off the protective backing, so now the sticky side is exposed. And I'm just gonna put a ton of hot glue right here, and I'm going to move the braid, the base of it, right on top, and just let that sit for a bit. And then I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna put a ton of hot glue up here and right here. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fold it over and pull it as tightly as possible. And then just press it down and let that dry. And then I have all of this excess fabric. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pinch the sides together because there's a sticky side to it. It'll stick together. I then cut off all of the excess on the foam piece right here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some more hot glue and I'm gonna put it right on the excess flaps of it, and I'm just gonna fold it in like this. And then hold it down until it dries and repeat on the other side. And then on the other end of the braid, we are going to tie off the braid again with the same string that we used for the top of the braid and the cotton batting. I usually use about 3 different strings to just kind of really funnel this down so it doesn't just stick out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our leftover hair wefts and we're just going to glue them around the base of the braid. You can use as many as you want. I usually end up using about 6 pieces of hair wefts for the tail. Then once you have the tail of the braid all done, you're going to take a strand from the back, and basically what you're going to do is you're going to wrap it around the little tie-off section of the braid to hide the hair wefts. So you're gonna hot glue, put hot glue all around, and then glue it, lay it flat, and then just wrap it around until the strand is all used up. And that's what the wraparound should look like once it's all done. And what this specific customer wants, she wants lights on her braid, so I went ahead and wrapped that. I got these off of Amazon. I got a pack of 4 sets of lights for like 20 bucks. I can post the link in the description below, so that way you can use those for your wigs if you'd like. But what I like about these lights is that they're remote controlled, so you don't have to try and find a switch to push them. You can have this really small remote in your hand and activate the lights that way. But I went ahead and wrapped the lights around, and you'll see what those look like on later. But for now, we're gonna put the braid to the side and we're gonna go style the base wig. Now that the base wig is styled, it is time to attach the braid to the base wig. So you're gonna lay the base wig down on the ground or wherever you want to work, and we're going to glue it to the inside of the wig right here. It is very important with this style, the over-the-shoulder style specifically, that we know which side to put the glue on. So this is the front of the braid, this is the back of the braid. We are going to be putting the glue on the back side of this, on the back side. If you're wanting to make the movie version, you're going to put it on the front side and glue the front down to the wig. And once you have the glue on the top of the braid, you're going to put it down in the center of the wig, of the center of the back, and the foam is going to be right at the line of where the wig cap ends. You're going to hold it down until it's cold and dry. With the braid now attached, we can begin the fun part of making this braid, which is adding the flowers. You can add as little or as many as you want. My personal preference is that I like to use smaller flowers, that way you can use more of them, but it doesn't hide the overall braid. And the nice thing about having that she has flowers on her wig is that you can go through and you can cover up all of the exposed sections of the cotton batting, or like where the braid, the little braid parts start. Or if you have sections that you don't want to cover with flowers, all you have to do is you take your nail and you just scratch at it and it'll cover up any open spots. That'll work for smaller areas like here, but bigger areas like this one or down here, these are going to be a lot harder to cover. So I would really recommend just using flowers to cover those. And then keep in mind as well that with this specific style, the underside of the braid isn't going to be seen. So you really don't have to worry about fixing any exposed areas or putting flowers on that part of the braid, because it's not gonna really ever be seen. And then one last thing is I would make sure to focus on putting flowers right here. It's kind of a weird spot, but this part is exposed when you're wearing your wig just because of how big it is. So if you put a lot of flowers, you're not going to worry about your hairline or this part being exposed. And here we have one completed Rapunzel wig. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any other questions about how you make this wig, please comment below and I will answer any questions that you guys have. Best of luck with making this wig and thanks for watching.